War. War never changes. Hey everybody, Santiago here. I'm here to tell you about my top 5 solo war games. Miniatures war games to be specific, not the chits on a board with, World War II strictly. Although it can include World War II or the Revolution or mechs on a table, sci-fi, fantasy, all that kind of stuff. So what I'm talking about are games where you have usually miniatures fighting against other miniatures on a table. You're rolling dice, hit points, different stats, movement rulers. Hopefully through this list, it'll be a little more clear because I know sometimes it can be a little confusing. So let's jump in at number 5. Okay, in at number 5 is the newest one to the list, and it bumped some other stuff on this list. And this is one page rules, both sci-fi and fantasies. They have two, but they're basically the same rule system. As with most games on this list, it's miniatures agnostic. Not all the games are, but what miniatures agnostic means is that you can use any miniatures you want, anything you want. You can even print out and make your own miniatures, which we've seen, I've seen in a lot of places. So in this game, it's a D6 pool-based system, very similar to Warhammer or Games Workshop's games, which of course is what it's got its influence from. Couple great things about this game that I wanted to point out is the rule simplicity. So the reason it even became a thing was because for a number of reasons. One is cost of Games Workshop's games and getting into that part of the hobby, into the Games Workshop world. One page rules wanted to make it affordable for people to not have to use their miniatures, but also the simplicity in the rules. As with each edition of Games Workshop games, it gets a little more complex. They add some stuff and then they'll pull it back with another edition. They didn't want to have so many changes, although since the beginning of one page rules, there have been a lot of changes. It's still not to the drastic changes that we've seen in the Warhammer games. So it's very minimal stats. You have a movement stat. You've got three main stats that basically represent your mind, body, and spirit. You've got a stat, your endurance stat, which is almost like points that you could use to pull off your different moves. But you can use it for a number of different things. A lot of games have that, like the Middle Earth strategy game has that, which is a really cool resource you can manage to push your character to do more, take more actions, do more on your turn. And it's this really cool balance of pushing that really hard and maybe taking wounds versus, pulling off a really cool move or taking more actions on a turn to really pull off something really heroic. So I really like that part of it. The online army builder is something I haven't really seen to this extent with other games. There may be others out there, but it was one of the really cool things about the game because you can go on the website or even use it on your phone. All the stats are there. You can click on the different buttons to build out your armies with the point system, and it's really really well done. And it's a really easy way to kind of translate or transfer the Games Workshop's miniatures, if you still enjoy the miniatures, to transfer them over. But you can use, again, any miniatures that you have with any other lines or any other companies that you want to, and sort of port them over to use in one page rules. And the army builder makes it really easy to build out your forces. Um, Again, it's free, but you can add more to it. You can pay a little bit to get the PDFs and expand it, which I really recommend because one, they're a great company. The fact that they're even doing that you can play their game for free if you want to with the basic rules on their website, and then you can chuck them a few coins to get the full rules, get the full campaign play, and it's really not a lot. I think it's $5 or something like that. It may have changed a little bit here and there, but you can get a lot for your money for the rules. They're going to be running a Kickstarter pretty soon, I believe, if it hasn't launched already, where they're going to be doing a big box set. You can buy STLs for their official miniatures line. They're really starting to expand as more people play this game. The last thing is the light and simple campaign system. So they've added this recently over the last year, where you can, again, it'll track it in the app, or if you use it online, you build your forces, your couple heroes, you throw in what miniatures you have as far as your forces, what you want to fight against over your campaign, and then you start a game. You go in there, you'll buy new gear, upgrade your guys, get experience to level up. Some of your guys might take injuries and stuff like that. Boom, you roll up a new game, and you just keep going. So it's really quick, very very simple, as opposed to some of the other games you'll see on this list, which is more intricate, which I like better. But sometimes I just want to get something on the table. The negatives is very keyword heavy. So where some of the other games are going to, you'll see, and I'm sure I'll post some pictures here. They have things that will streamline a game. An icon that means poison or stunned or something like that. Where this game has so many keywords that mean different things, so many abilities, and as you play more, it becomes a little easier to really get all that in your head and get it straight. But still, even after, I don't know how many games I've played of this, it's still, having to refer back and look at the sheets and stuff. It gets a little cumbersome as far as a mental load goes, thinking about that stuff. And then the system you may be used to if you've never played Warhammer before, but in other systems, which I like better, there aren't multiple rolls. If I roll to attack, I want to look at another number and see if I hit or not, or roll my damage, put it up against their armor or defense, and then boom, just go from there. So it's one thing I don't like about this system and Warhammer systems as well, where you roll, see if you hit, okay, okay, these hit. Now I'll roll again. Do they do damage? Okay, now they're gonna be there's another roll to see if they save. I'm just not a big fan of that. It kind of slows the game down for me. But that's why it's here at number 5. So in at number 4 is the Walking Dead All Out War miniatures game. This is by Mantic Games. So Walking Dead All Out War is based off of the comic series. This is not based off of the show, even though the show is also based off of the comics. There's a couple ways to play. There's scenarios that are just kind of one-off scenarios. They're all based off of situations from the comics if you've read them. If you've watched the show based off of the comics, it kind of follows through pretty closely as it goes through. They've changed a couple things, but you can play those scenarios cooperatively or solo specifically, playing all the way through the different stories and chapters. There's a lot of expansions with the game that I've gotten, really enjoyed them, that will kind of go through as the group leaves Atlanta and just kind of travels. There's an expansion that adds a sort of a campaign play where you have a map of that region that the comics are based off of, and you're going, you might go on a scouting mission, you might go to get supplies and things like that. There's a couple things I wanted to point out about the game. One is the custom dice, which is very different from the last game I just talked about, where you have different stats to represent your attacks and shooting. You have red, white, and blue dice. The blue is the best kind of dice, and the red are the worst. You're gonna roll those dice against the defensive value that the character or zombies have to deal damage. It adds a couple other things that are very, very thematic, and overall, you'll hear me say that about this game a lot. One of them is the threat track. So this represents just things getting more chaotic, you making noise, trying to do whatever the mission is asking you to do. And as this gets higher, the event cards that come in after the rounds will get worse, progressively worse. So all quiet is the lowest threat level. Not as much would happen there. For example, on this card, nothing happens. A walker, the walkers suddenly stop and nothing else happens. Versus high threat, um, there's a couple walkers that spawn into the board, and some of the walkers that have been prone stand right up. So it adds that part of it, so you can't take your time. That really creates the tension in the game, because if you're playing in a scenario where it's just walkers, you can sneak around in this game and it won't draw walkers. But as that moves and continues to move up, medium threat, high threat, there's going to be more walkers coming onto the board and a lot of things happening to a point where now you're running out of time. So it really pushes you where you're going to have to decide when to run, to get what you need to get and get out of there before things get too crazy and there's going to be too many walkers for you to do anything. In the solo game, there's a little expansion that they have with the game that added an AI to be able to play against, where you can use other survivors. So what's cool about the game is that when you play scenario